I should have known something was off that day. My son, Ethan, had just turned 18, and our house was filled with laughter and shallow blessings. His grandparents were grinning from ear to ear, my husband Mark was lounging like a king, and I, as always, was playing hostess, making sure the cake was perfect, the decorations stayed intact, and everyone got their moment. When it came time for Ethan to make a wish, I stood there, watching him with the kind of expectant warmth only a mother could offer. I didn't want much, just that he'd say something kind, something about health or family, maybe me. I was foolish. He clasped his hands and began, "I wish my grandparents live a long life, that my dad gets promoted and earns millions." They clapped, of course they did. Then his grandmother nudged him. That look on her face said it all. "Don't forget to say something about your mother, or she'll throw a fit." Ethan rolled his eyes, sighed like I was the burden of his life, and added in a flat tone, "And I wish my mom and dad would just get a divorce already so she can leave us alone. She's a curse to this family." The words dropped like a bomb. No one flinched. Not even Mark. They laughed. Laughed. Like it was some hilarious inside joke. Mark looked at me and chuckled. Well, maybe if you weren't so strict with him all the time. My heart shattered, but my face stayed still. This wasn't the first time, but it was the most public. I had spent my life giving to this child his food, his clothes, his education, his future, and he looked at me like I was trash. I had been the one up at 3 a.m. rubbing his stomach when his IBS flared. I had been the one hand-making blueberry ice cream because he hated store-bought. I had been the one who gave up job opportunities, friends, and my identity just so he could stand there and say I ruined his life. Years later, he moved overseas, took his grandparents and father with him, left me behind like a used tissue. I begged him to let me come. He shoved my hand off and said, "I've already found a nice, gentle woman to be with Dad. You'll ruin the vibe. Don't come." And just like that, they disappeared. I lived alone in a basement apartment, growing sicker each month, until one day I simply collapsed. When they found me, my legs were already rotting, maggots forming where circulation had failed. I had one breath left when they carried me out. For the first time in years, people gathered, not my family, of course, but the kind volunteers, the community worker who fed me soup, the nurse who wiped the filth off my skin without a grimace. Someone whispered, "This illness wasn't even that hard to treat." "How did she end up like this?" "Where's her family?" one asked. No one answered. They glanced at the wall filled with framed photos and spotted Ethan in a suit, smiling with some award in hand. "Is that her son? The tech mogul? The one who said all his family lives with him?" They found a way to contact him. I could barely lift my head, but I tried, I really tried, because it had been nearly 20 years since I last saw him. He appeared on the screen, older, richer, colder. My heart still whispered, "That's my boy." I used everything I had left to whisper, "Ethan," he scowled. "You're still alive?" Then hung up. Just like that. The volunteers were horrified. "What's wrong with you?" "Your mom's dying. She just wanted to see you one last time." He replied with a scoff. "To me, she's a stranger. Whether she dies or not, that's your problem. Throw her in the ground or into the ocean. Just don't call me again." That was the moment it all broke. All the memories, the late-night study sessions, the broken thermometers, the rainstorms I waited in when he forgot his umbrella useless. He'd already deleted me from his life long before today. But then something strange happened. One minute I was in that hospice bed, body broken, heart frozen. The next, I was staring at myself in a bathroom mirror, face young again. It was his 18th birthday. I was back. Back in time. And in my hand was that damn winter camp invitation. The ticket that gave him his shot at rubbing shoulders with the elite, the one that helped him build his entire fortune. In my past life, I had begged and bled for that ticket. I'd licked the feet of wealthy women, got athlete's foot in my mouth for months, humiliated myself to get it. But here I was again, at the very same moment, holding it and knowing exactly what giving it to him would mean. Laughter echoed from the living room. Mark's voice boomed, "Elon, stop stalling. Ethan's about to make a wish." I walked out and the air chilled like someone had just turned off the heater. I was always the cold breeze in that house, never the warmth. Ethan glanced at me with that same disinterested glance, then put his hands together and made his wish. I hope my grandparents live forever. I hope my dad gets rich. And his eyes landed on me. I hope my mom finally leaves us alone and disappears from our lives. Forever. The exact words. No change. Not even a comma out of place. But this time I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I didn't fall to my knees and beg for his love like a desperate dog. Mark chuckled. Told you, it's because you were always too harsh on him. He hates you now. Serves you right. His parents nodded, smug. Children know who loves them. And clearly, you're not it. I smiled. If it's a birthday wish, how could I not grant it? The room went quiet. Mark smirked. Wow, you're really going through with it this time? Absolutely, I replied. But not tomorrow. This afternoon. No need to wait. He laughed louder, convinced I was bluffing. But I wasn't. I'd done this dance in a past life. This time I was leading. And it was time they learned what happens when the puppet cuts her strings. Mark leaned back in his chair like he'd just won a bet, smug as ever. Sure, Claire, you're bluffing again, right? We've heard this before. Go on, give Ethan the gift, and let's get back to dinner. I didn't say a word. Instead, I turned toward the hallway, calmly rolled out the suitcases I'd already packed that morning because I knew. I knew how it would play out. And this time, I came prepared. That golden ticket to the elite winter camp still clutched in my hand, the same ticket I'd bled and begged for in my last life, the one that changed Ethan's future. I walked past them toward the door. Ethan's grandmother, Helen, scoffed, "You can drop the act. You'd never leave your only son." I turned and smiled. I won't have to. He's already made it very clear doesn't want me. She reached for the envelope, that fake warm smile glued to her lips. Just give Ethan the ticket. Don't ruin his big day with your drama. Ethan crossed his arms like the entitled brat he'd grown into and muttered, "What kind of garbage gift is that anyway? Looks cheap." He yanked the envelope from my hand and ripped it open, dismissive, until his eyes landed on the contents. And just like that, the arrogant smirk melted off his face. No way is this real? The Siren Winter Leadership Camp? How the hell did you get this? I reached out and plucked it from his hands before he could breathe on it again. You said you didn't want anything from me, right? Well, now you won't have it. The room went still. Mark stood up, eyes sharp. That ticket is for your son. No, Mark, that ticket was earned by me, through humiliation you can't even imagine. And since I'm not his mother anymore, according to him, he doesn't get to benefit from my existence. Jesus, Claire, stop being so petty. He's just a kid, Mark growled, stepping closer. I laughed. Oh, now I'm the one being childish? Helen's voice cut in, nasty as ever. What's really going on, huh? Got yourself a new man out there? What kind of mother denies her own son the opportunity of a lifetime? I looked at her, this woman who undermined me at every step, who taught Ethan to resent me, who whispered in his ear that I was controlling, aggressive, less than because I came from a working-class family. You called me a curse, I said quietly, for years. And now that I'm actually giving you what you always wanted, you can't handle it. Mark puffed up his chest. Fine. Let's go file for divorce. This afternoon. I nodded. Perfect. I already scheduled the appointment. That shook him. Just a flicker. But I saw it. He wasn't expecting me to follow through. He thought I'd cry, beg, plead like the woman he'd trained me to be. But I wasn't her anymore. Ethan shouted behind me, "You're crazy. You'll regret this. I don't need you. My dad and grandparents can get me a ticket. You think you're the only one with connections." I didn't answer. I let the silence carry the weight of everything he would never understand. At the courthouse, Mark was all swagger and smirks until he saw the paperwork. Turns out, he'd already moved 90% of our assets out of his name and into his parents', thinking I'd walk away with nothing. But I'd seen that trick in my last life. And this time, I wasn't playing nice. I signed those divorce papers with a steady hand, feeling lighter with every stroke of the pen. "This is a mistake," he muttered, trying to read my face. "You're doing this out of spite. You'll beg to come back." I smiled. "Try me." He laughed bitterly. "Fine. But you're walking out of here with almost nothing. Don't say I didn't warn you." "Oh, Mark," I said sweetly, "I'd rather sleep on the street than spend one more night under your roof." His face darkened, but I was already walking away. When I got back to the house to grab the last of my things, Ethan was waiting with a face full of rage and entitlement. "Give me the ticket," he snapped. "Or I'll never forgive you." I shrugged. "I'm not looking for forgiveness. I'm looking for peace." Helen tried again, softer this time, holding up his glasses like a prop. "He worked so hard for this, Claire. You know how bad his vision is. He's been pushing himself to the limit." "Then maybe you and Mark can get him into the camp," I said calmly. "You've always told me I was irrelevant, remember?" Mark stormed in from the garage, slamming doors like that would intimidate me. "You selfish woman. This is your child. How can you do this to him?" "You mean the child who wished me gone on his birthday? Who said he wanted me out of his life?" "Don't be dramatic, Mark. I'm just giving him what he asked for." Ethan screamed, "You'll see. You're nothing without me. You're just a small-town loser who lucked into this family." I tilted my head. "You're right. I did come from nothing. And still, I managed to raise you. Imagine what I can do now, without all of you dragging me down." That night, I moved into a tiny apartment across town. My new landlord, Mr. Carter, offered me a discounted rent if I could help tutor his daughter Emily through college prep. Emily was sweet, but academically average, the kind of girl who just needed someone to believe in her. I said yes, because helping her felt like breathing fresh air. No judgment, no manipulation, just honest effort. In 1 week, her scores improved. In 2, her confidence grew. Mr. Carter was thrilled. He invited me to dinner to thank me. We were just leaving when, of course, fate tossed me another slap in the face. There was Mark and Ethan on the sidewalk, both stunned at the sight of me walking beside the Carters, laughing. "Where the hell have you been?" Mark barked. "My mom's 75 and still doing the laundry you should have done. You don't even care?" I didn't answer. Mr. Carter explained gently that I'd been tutoring his daughter. Mark rolled his eyes. "Well, that explains how she's affording rent. But you're wasting money. Claire's a hick with no education." Ethan sneered at Emily. "Only idiots hire someone like her." Emily balled her fists. "She's your mother. How can you talk to her like that?" Ethan snorted. "Please. I made myself. You think she contributed? I'm a prodigy." I stopped her from saying more. "He's not worth it," I whispered. "Let it go." But inside, I was smiling. Because I knew something they didn't this time. They wouldn't win. This time, they'd finally learn who I was when I stopped trying to be good. 2 weeks passed like a quiet ripple before the storm, and just when I thought Ethan might finally move on without trying to guilt-trip me, he showed up again, this time with Mark and Helen trailing behind like ghosts with unfinished business. Standing right in front of my apartment door, their faces twisted with panic and fury. Ethan was holding a duffel bag in one hand and a crumpled paper in the other, his eyes bloodshot and wild. "Claire," he barked, like we were still tethered by old expectations. "Why did Siren reject my ticket? Why did they say it was invalid?" I gave him a bland smile, no emotion in my voice. "Because it is. I sold the real one. What you had was a commemorative copy. Worthless." Their faces froze, shock running like electricity through all 3 of them. Mark's jaw clenched so hard I thought it might crack. Helen blinked like she'd just swallowed vinegar. Ethan's voice rose a full octave. "You sold it? You sabotaged me on purpose." "I made 10 grand from it," I replied smoothly. "It was the least the world owed me." For a moment, no one spoke. Mark tried to regain ground first, gritting through his teeth. "He's your son, Claire. You're seriously okay with humiliating him like this?" "Mark," I said evenly, "your son has humiliated me for years. He's the one who wanted me gone. I'm just honoring that request." Ethan was shaking, fists clenched, that toxic cocktail of pride and entitlement about to explode. "I'll get another ticket." "We don't need you." Helen grabbed his arm, trying to soothe him. "She's just bitter, baby. Don't let her win. We'll get you into that camp without her help." I tilted my head. "You're all so smart, so connected. You've always said I'm the least useful person in the family. Prove it. Get the ticket." The moment I said that, their faces changed. Not fully, but enough for me to see the panic simmering under their skin. Because they couldn't. That ticket had taken me a full year of degrading myself, studying every elite family, licking boots, and enduring cruelty no decent human should ever tolerate. No one was going to hand it over to Helen or Mark just because they wanted it. But Ethan, poor delusional Ethan, still clung to fantasy. "We'll show you," he snapped. "Dad, get the ticket in 3 days. She thinks she's better than us. Prove her wrong." I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. I just nodded, "Good luck." And with that, I closed the door. Behind it, I could hear their frantic voices scrambling like ants under sunlight. They thought I was bluffing. They thought I'd panic and cave. They still didn't understand I had nothing left to lose. That ticket wasn't just a piece of paper, it was the symbol of everything I had sacrificed. The cold nights, the callous knees from scrubbing, the jobs I took where I was nothing but furniture to the rich, the woman who once made me lick her shoe clean because she was in a mood, I did it all for Ethan. And what did I get? A death sentence in a basement apartment while my son drank champagne on camera and told the world his whole family was with him. No more. The next 3 days were deliciously silent until the 4th night, when the shouting started. I was sipping tea, reading in peace, when I heard it through the thin apartment walls. Mark yelling, Ethan slamming doors, Helen sobbing dramatically. I ignored it all until someone knocked. It was a cop. "Ma'am, your son's having a mental health crisis," he said, professional but curious. "He's locked himself in the bathroom, says he's not leaving. They asked if you'd come speak to him." I blinked. "They kicked me out." "I'm no longer family." "You're still his mother," the officer said. I opened my phone and hit play. The audio recording of Ethan's birthday wish filled the hallway like a ghostly chant. "I wish she'd divorce my dad and never come back into our lives. I hope she disappears forever." The cop stared at me, his mouth slightly open. "He said that." Loud and proud, I replied. Right before the cake was cut. The neighbors had gathered behind him now, whispering, exchanging glances. One woman muttered, "I knew something was wrong with that boy." Another added, "Claire used to do everything for them. Remember how spotless their house was? And she used to walk him to school rain or shine." I closed the door while they processed the truth. Later that night, I received a text from Ethan. "You're pathetic. You think ruining me makes you strong? I'll still make it without you. Watch." I didn't respond. I'd seen that version of him, already the one who built an empire on the back of my sacrifice and left me to die when I had nothing left. He wasn't someone I owed anything to. Divorce finalization day arrived in silence. Mark looked like someone had sucked the joy out of his soul. His smirk was gone, replaced by bitterness. Ethan stood beside him, arms crossed, pretending not to care. "Without me," Mark muttered, "you're gonna crumble. You'll never find another man. Not with your age. Not with your looks." I smiled brightly and signed the divorce decree like it was a birthday card. "Thanks for the reminder. Now go enjoy your freedom and your loneliness." Mark looked like he might scream. Ethan rolled his eyes and walked off. I walked out of the office that day feeling like my skin could finally breathe. I went back to my job with the Carters, tutoring Emily, focusing on her progress. She was blooming. Her dad even started cooking lunch for me just so I'd stay longer. On weekends, we reviewed vocabulary in the park, laughing and bonding like family. One day, as we walked home, we crossed paths with Helen. She looked haggard, older, like the years had fast-forwarded on her face. Her grocery bags were heavy, her hair unbrushed. I could tell she'd been doing the chores I used to handle. She scowled. "You really are a lowlife. Teaching someone else's kid and ignoring your own. What kind of mother are you?" Emily's jaw dropped. That's how you talk to her? You should be thanking her, not insulting her. I squeezed her hand. Don't waste your breath on people who can't hear truth. We walked on. Behind us, Helen muttered curses that sounded like poison. That night, through the paper-thin walls of her apartment, I heard Ethan yelling again. She can speak English? Are you serious? Emily Carter knows more than me. My smile curled as I cleaned the dishes. It was starting. The unraveling. And I hadn't lifted a finger. People in the neighborhood started gossiping, not just behind closed doors anymore, but openly, like I'd suddenly become the cautionary tale that made sense. Can you believe Claire's son used to be the top student? Look at him now, flailing because Mommy stopped wiping his nose for him, one lady whispered outside the convenience store while bagging lettuce. Word was out. Ethan Morgan, once the pride of his block, failed to secure a spot in the winter camp and hadn't stopped having meltdowns since. Meanwhile, Emily Carter, the girl I tutored for free rent, kept rising like a phoenix, her grades improving weekly, her confidence no longer a flicker but a full-blown flame. Her dad, Mr. Carter, was beside himself with joy, calling me a miracle worker every other day and practically begging me to stay past dinner time just to keep her momentum going. He started preparing all my meals, saying it was the least he could do. I hadn't been treated with that kind of warmth in decades, and I was so disarmed by the basic decency of it all, I found myself forgetting to brace for the next slap. Then came the rumors. Apparently, the entire neighborhood had turned Ethan and Emily into some kind of academic rivalry drama, complete with betting pools on who'd score higher on the upcoming exams. Most bets leaned toward Ethan had history, accolades, and years of being groomed like a prodigy. Emily was a dark horse. Sweet, hardworking, but with no legacy to back her. Just me. Her underdog tutor. I told her not to care. That we weren't here to compete. That she should just follow her own rhythm. She nodded, but I could see the fire had already been lit. She wanted to prove them wrong, not just for herself, but for me. The night before the big exam, she couldn't sleep. I offered to tell her a bedtime story, like I used to do for Ethan back when he still let me love him. I told her about growing up in rural Georgia, where we didn't have good teachers or proper chalkboards, where kids shared pencils and classrooms smelled like damp books and red dirt. I told her how my mom used to make me eat green beans every week, swearing they made me smarter. I told her about catching frogs barefoot in the fields and jumping rope with vines. She laughed softly, and then, finally, her breathing slowed into sleep. I smiled and turned off the light. That same night, chaos erupted next door. Mark was banging on my door like he was the fire department, yelling my name like I owed him air. Claire, it's Ethan's in pain. He won't go to the hospital. He says he's dying. I opened the door half asleep, blinking. So? He stared at me like I was the heartless one. You're his mother, he shouted. He needs you. I stared at him for a long second. No, Mark. He needs consequences. I'm not the woman you left to die in a basement anymore. I walked past him and stood in the hallway. Ethan was hunched over, clutching his stomach, pale and shaking. IBS again. Triggered by nerves, the same as during middle school exams. The same stomach I used to rub for hours through the night. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Don't come near me, he growled, trying to summon that old pride. I shrugged. Gladly. I turned around and walked away. Behind me, I heard glass shatter. Then screaming. Then sobbing. Then footsteps scrambling to call 911. I didn't turn back. I slept better that night than I had in years. The next morning, I packed up my things. The tutoring agreement with Emily had ended anyway. She had finished her exams, and I had found a job in a nearby city. It was time. I moved out before noon. The new apartment was smaller but sunny, with actual neighbors who smiled and greeted each other. I was starting to feel like a person again, someone who didn't exist solely to be consumed and discarded. Weeks later, Emily texted me her results, 55 points over the entrance requirement. Her father sent a voice note that was mostly him crying. I wept too, just a little, and then treated myself to new shoes for the first time in 10 years. That evening, while shopping for Emily's congratulatory gift, I felt it again, that crawling sensation, like someone breathing down my neck. I ducked into an alley, crouched behind a column, and waited. 10 seconds later, a figure emerged, awkward and twitchy. I kicked his shin before he even saw me. Ethan yelped and stumbled backward, rubbing his leg like a kid caught stealing candy. "What the hell, Mom?" he cried. "Why are you following me?" "I'm not following you, you're following me," I snapped. He looked sheepish, then deflated. "Okay, fine. I wanted to talk." I raised an eyebrow. "You've had years to talk. What's different now?" He opened his mouth, then sank to his knees. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I messed up. I was stupid. I thought you'd always be there. I thought that I was disposable." I finished for him. "Because I made it too easy for you." He sniffled, nodding. "I miss you, Mom. I want to fix things." "You don't get to fix things just because your world fell apart," I said, cold and clear. "You weren't sorry when you left me to die. You were only sorry when I stopped saving you." "I'll retake the exam." "I'll do whatever you say," he pleaded. "Please just come back." I pulled my bag tighter over my shoulder. "I'm not your emergency exit anymore, Ethan." He tried to follow me again. I moved. Again. Changed numbers. Again. This time, I moved to a whole different state. I didn't tell a soul where I went. I rebuilt. Quietly. Completely. Years passed. I remarried. My new husband Daniel was gentle, respectful, the kind of man who didn't bark commands or hand out emotional blackmail like party favors. We had a daughter. She was bright and funny and treated me like I mattered. One summer, we went to New York for vacation. We were at a cozy Italian place when the waiter approached our table. "Hello, I'll be taken care of," he froze. I looked up. Ethan. Older now, weathered. His name tag read E. Morgan. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something, then clamped shut as his eyes darted to my daughter, who was laughing with her dad. He stepped back, turned around, and disappeared into the kitchen. My daughter glanced at me. "Mom? You okay?" I smiled. "Yeah, sweetheart. That was just someone I used to know." I thought that was the end of it, seeing Ethan again after all those years, him in a stained server apron, eyes hollowed by time and regret. Fleeing the sight of the woman he once told to die and vanish like I was some inconvenient burden to his perfect life, but of course, it wasn't. A few days after our return from New York, I got a message from an old neighbor back in Georgia, a woman who used to sit on her porch with a glass of sweet tea and more gossip than any TV show could match. "Claire," she said in her voice memo, "you'll never guess who showed up on your old street asking around for you like a lost dog. Your son." "Yes." "Ethan. Said he was trying to find you, said something about needing to talk." "But honey," we told him the truth. "You don't live here anymore. You haven't in years." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I'd moved on. But she kept sending updates anyway, because Southern women live for closure even when it isn't theirs. Turns out Ethan had gone back to my childhood town thinking maybe, just maybe, I'd be hiding out there like a guilty fugitive waiting for him to come rescue me with his overdue apology. But there was nothing left of me in that place. The house I grew up in had been sold when my mother passed. The tiny corner store I once worked at? Replaced by $1 plus. My roots had long since been burned to ash, and he stood in the ruins, trying to gather something he'd willingly tossed into the fire. He stayed for a month. Then left. That's when the stories started to spread. Mark had remarried. Or tried to. 3 times. Each one ended in spectacular disaster, courtesy of Ethan. Screaming matches. Broken furniture. One woman left in the middle of the night and took his TV as revenge. And Mark, the man who once sat on a throne built from my sacrifices, had been demoted twice, finally landing in a lowly sales job where he reported to a guy 10 years younger. Karma didn't knock on their door, it kicked it down, and they still acted surprised. Ethan, clinging to his ego like it was a lifeline, refused to accept community college as his fate. He insisted on going abroad, swearing he'd still make it to America like he'd dreamed. His doting grandparents, bless their blindly loyal hearts, sold their house to fund his fantasy and even dipped into their funeral savings. Mark, of course, was livid. Word is he got into a fist fight with his own father. The whole street heard the screaming. Meanwhile, I was living quietly, coaching Emily through her first college internship, watching my daughter learn how to tie her hair without asking for help, and planting herbs on the windowsill of a kitchen I didn't have to clean for anyone but myself. Life, in all its simplicity, was finally mine. And then, years later, we went back to New York, just a short family trip, my husband Daniel, our daughter Lily, and me. We were checking into a hotel near Central Park when the front desk clerk gave us a funny look. "You have a message on file," she said, tapping her keyboard. "Someone left it here a few months ago just in case you ever returned." She handed me a folded note. I hesitated, then opened it. 2 words, "I'm sorry." No name. But I knew that handwriting. It was Ethan's. That slanted scrawl I used to nag him to fix every time he left his homework on the kitchen counter. My hands shook slightly as I tucked the note back into my purse and smiled. "Trash it," I said. "We're not here for ghosts." We spent the next few days eating gelato, feeding birds in the park, and shopping for matching scarves. I didn't bring up the note again, not even once. Not when we walked past the restaurant where Ethan had once served our table. Not when I caught Daniel glancing at me curiously, probably wondering what memory had flickered behind my eyes. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. He knew better than to ask. Back at home, I started receiving emails from a random, newly created address. No name. No photo. Just desperate lines typed out in fragmented thoughts. I was wrong. I wish I could go back. Please answer me. I miss you. I don't know who I am anymore. I deleted every message. Blocked the sender. And then another popped up. I can't sleep. I think about you every night. You were the only one who ever gave a damn about me. Please, Mom. I didn't reply. Because the woman he was writing to? She didn't exist anymore. I buried her when they left me to rot alone. Now I was someone new. Someone whole. Someone unbreakable. But deep down, I knew Ethan would never stop searching. Not until he found a way to rewrite his past. Not until he found some version of me who'd pretend none of it happened. But that version was gone. She died in silence, in a basement, in a world where love was a one-way street. The only version of me left knew her worth and would never trade it for a text full of regret. Still, I knew the story wasn't over. I could feel it like thunder on the edge of the sky. There was one more storm coming. And this time, I'd be the one holding the umbrella. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of day that starts ordinary until it punches you in the gut. I was making lunch, just grilled cheese and tomato soup. Lily was humming some Taylor Swift song in the background. Daniel was answering emails in the living room, and then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, I thought maybe it was a package. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Amazon. It was a police officer. "Mrs. Morgan?" he asked, though I hadn't used that name in years. I nodded cautiously. "We received a call from New York Presbyterian. A man listed you as his next of kin. His name is Ethan Morgan. He's currently in critical condition following a car accident. Would you like the address?" And, just like that, the ground dropped out from under me. I didn't answer him right away. I just stared, hearing everything and nothing at once. Daniel came up behind me, his hand landing gently on my back. "Claire," he said softly, "you don't have to go. Not unless you want to." And I didn't. I really didn't. But I went anyway. Maybe it was old muscle memory. Maybe it was that last sliver of motherhood that refuses to die even when your heart has already buried the child. When I walked into the hospital room, I nearly didn't recognize him. Tubes everywhere. Bandaged up like he'd been through war. His face was bruised and swollen, and yet it was him. My boy. My Ethan. The one who once wore Batman pajamas and cried when I ran out of blueberry yogurt. I sat down in the corner. I didn't hold his hand. I didn't call his name. I just sat, breathing. After a while, a nurse came in and asked if I was going to stay the night. I said no. I had a daughter waiting for me. I left before he even woke up. 2 days later, another message showed up. This time from the hospital social worker. Ethan had survived, but with multiple fractures, a broken rib, and a minor brain hemorrhage. He would need weeks of care. He's asking for you, she said. I stared at the email for a long time before deleting it. I didn't respond. I'd done my part. I showed up. I looked at what was left. And I walked away. The Claire from my past life would have camped outside his door, slept in the waiting room, wiped his sweat with trembling hands and whispered that everything would be okay. But that Claire died alone, with flies on her skin and no one beside her. The Claire standing here now didn't owe anyone anything. A week passed. Then 2. I heard through an acquaintance that Mark had finally visited Ethan in the hospital, bringing him a lukewarm sandwich and a guilt-ridden silence. Helen hadn't come. She was in a care home now, her memory slipping, still occasionally asking if Claire had cooked dinner yet. Life has a funny way of looping around, doesn't it? Eventually, the hospital bills piled up, and Ethan started calling again. New numbers. New burner emails. New pleas. I have nothing. I can't walk properly. I need help. Please, Mom. Please. I never replied. I just poured myself tea and watched Lily do her homework, her tongue sticking out slightly as she solved a math problem, completely unaware that across the country, the boy who once threw away everything I gave him was now begging for scraps of the woman he had buried. One afternoon, Daniel sat beside me on the porch. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said honestly. I thought it would be harder. But it's not. It's quiet. He's still your son, he said gently, not judging, just stating a truth. Biologically, I corrected. But the title of son, he gave that up a long time ago. Daniel nodded and didn't press. That's the thing about marrying a good man late in life, you don't have to keep explaining your pain. They just let you breathe. A month later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I picked it up. Mom? The voice was raspy, defeated, childlike. I didn't say anything. I know I don't deserve anything, he continued. But I just wanted to hear your voice. One last time. I hung up. Then I blocked the number. Then I cried not because I regretted it, but because it didn't hurt anymore. And that was the saddest part. That I had loved someone so much, so completely, that it nearly destroyed me, and now I could walk away from them like they were a stranger begging outside a store. That's what real healing looks like. It's not loud. It's not pretty. It's just silent distance and no more shaking hands. I still get messages sometimes. From people who knew us back then. From his old teachers. From random social media accounts saying, "You're a monster for abandoning your child." And to that I say, I didn't abandon him. I left to save myself. I left when no one else would. I left because staying would have meant dying piece by piece until nothing was left but skin and guilt. And now, years later, I live in a house where no one yells. I eat food I actually enjoy. I sleep without crying. I have a husband who asks how my day was and actually listens. I have a daughter who draws me pictures and calls me her best friend. And Ethan? He's a closed chapter. One I don't regret reading. One I don't plan to reopen. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a mother can do is walk away.